Hey there. Trying out a new format, and because today I received quite an interesting question, I thought, why not make a video out of it? But because I um, want to explain things in such a way that they would require probably 99% images, I basically decided I should not be recording the video of me talking, but rather do sort of like a screen sharing. So let's begin. You will see my mouse cursor intentionally just because I want to show you a lot of things. Okay. So, um, the question that I received today, and this is the actual image of it, is, and probably you're gonna see it right away. Is there a problem with my brand new guitar because I've ordered it online and upon receiving it, I see these dips right here where the fret slots are. They're kind of like they have these uh, trenches here, right? Kind of like some holes, some deep cuts. I mean, we all know, and also the viewer knows that this is supposed to be here as a slot. It's just that it seems unusually deep and not flush with the outer edge of the neck or fretboard. So the question is, why is this happening? Is this normal? Will this affect me in any way in the future? So the quick version of this is it's perfectly normal, I would say, to some extent. And no, it will not affect you. However, I want to dive way deeper into why this happens, and not only for this case, but for basically any sort of issue with your fret ends. I want to do kind of like a general overview of how frets are being put in and the different types of ways in which you can do that and the different sorts of problems that appear. So this is more like an educational video on frets, not necessarily like a master class on installing frets and going too deep into the whole thing, but especially around the fret ends, I just want to give some very helpful insight into how things are being done and how your guitars are being made from the factory, and not only like maybe by some private luthier or guitar tech when they're refretting things. So yeah, let's go right into it. So first thing that I would want to say is that if this is your problem, you should be probably happy because you're not having the opposite problem, which is much, much more frequent. And we'll go into it right now. So, um, first and foremost, people know that there are these things called frets that obviously they have to be installed on guitars, but not too many people know that the fret wire uh, initially comes in large spools, such as these ones in this video, sorry, in this image right here. And it takes for someone like your guitar tech or someone else, luthier or maybe the factory selling individual frets, they have to somehow take the effort into cutting them to the right size so that they can be installed. However, even when you're cutting them individually like this, you are never cutting them at the perfect size for each fret, and then you just fit it snug in, and that's it, right? I mean, first of all, if you look at any guitar, you will see that at the very top, meaning towards the headstock, at your very first frets, the guitar is a little bit narrower, and as you progress towards the end of the neck towards your pickups, it gets wider. So these frets would have to have slightly increasing lengths as you go forward, but that's that's kind of like something that I'll show you next. So let's say someone did take the effort and they did cut your fret. Sometimes it's not as cleanly as that one. It's more like here, kind of like an uneven surface due to the pliers that that they're using or the different tools. However, let's assume that you have perfectly flush sides for your fret. You can see this is the fret crown, and the thing here that's in question for today's video is this T bar vertical bar here is called the fret tang. Okay, so this is the crown, this is the tang, and these are the barbs along the fret tang. They're there for a reason to prevent your fret from lifting up from its slot once it's put there. Uh, there there are a lot of things that I would wish to touch upon when talking about how to properly seat the fret wire. But we won't be doing that in today's video because it's a little bit off topic. So let's proceed. So you have this, this fret. Let's assume by some weird chance it's perfectly flush, and it's, you know, perfectly dimensioned so that it fits whatever fret you want to put it in. Again, that will never happen, but let's just assume for one moment that you would have such a scenario. Now, you would expect that if you take the proper care into seating it properly, you would be getting something like this. Well, that won't happen. So, how do you actually end up with such a result where, as you can see, the size of the fretboard and the side of the fret itself, they're perfectly flush and even. Therefore, nothing sticks out and nothing is pushing in like in our viewer's case. So, how do you get this this scenario right here? Well, first, let's go back to the first image. Okay, so here, why is this thing happening? Well, um, two main causes might be for what we're seeing here. First cause is that the fret itself, and for this particular guitar, the frets themselves were cut just a little bit short, kind of like everywhere. Where I mean, the viewer told me it's not for every fret, but for a lot of frets it is like this. So let's say whenever you have something like this, it might be the fault of the fret wire being cut maybe half a millimeter to a millimeter shorter on maybe each side, and that gives you this slight offset here missing in, right? So you have kind of like some resulting dips, some, like I said, some trenches. Or what might happen is that at the time of seating these frets, the frets were cut just perfectly. However, with changes in humidity and temperature, the fretboard itself expands, and the whole neck actually kind of expands. Therefore, because the fret itself, being made out of metal, does not expand, it gets left behind, sort of speak, by the wood, right? So that's kind of like what happens when you have this problem that the viewer was describing. But more often than not, you would have the opposite problem, and this is what most people out there are suffering from, where the, again, opposite thing happens. So um, either the fret is being cut a little bit too wide, and then it's not being properly leveled flush with a file, so that it just touches the it yeah, so it kind of sits flush with the side of the fretboard, or maybe again this was done properly at some point in time when the guitar was being built. But then, as wood actually constricts by further losing humidity, now the fret wire gets left behind and the wood pushes in. So usually what happens is if your guitar wood was already perfectly dehydrated, left for proper drying times and so on and so forth, and it has little to no humidity in it. The only thing that it might happen to it is that it starts absorbing humidity, and this thing happens. However, most guitars are not properly dried before being constructed, so the opposite happens. They still have a little bit of humidity left in them, and then by the time you're like 6 months in, or 1 year, or 2 years in, it starts losing humidity, and this is what happens. Now, uh, as the time of recording is what, 31st of January 2024. This picture right here was sent to me today. It's winter in the northern hemisphere here where I'm from and the viewers also from. Therefore, in winters you are usually having very low humidity in contrast to summers. So this should not be because of low humidity and dehydrating the wood. If anything, the opposite would have happened, which is this one, right? So let's proceed further. Okay, you kind of have these things happening with frets sticking out, and they really cut your hand when you're sliding back and forth, either playing or just feeling the guitar on the side. They're commonly called fret sprouts. But yeah, usually when you have something like this, it takes for a guitar tech or luthier, or even yourself, if you know how to do such work, you have to basically have a file with which you can file the fret ends so that you can bring them flush, just kissing the same level with the finish here, or the fretboard if it's raw wood, unfinished wood. Um, and then once you do this, you can see here the file dust, the debris. Once you flush it down, now it's rough, so you have to polish it. And after you polish it, you kind of get this nice, cool result. You can see here on the left the before and then after. So this is kind of how you fix the opposite problem. Now, it's not just about cutting your hand. The problem also happens on multiple levels, whereas, for example, here with more fragile woods, such as rosewood, for example, rosewood is known to be less dense and kind of chips if it's being poked or strained. Even when you're changing frets, it might chip. You might chip the fretboard when you're removing the old frets, or even when you're plugging in the new ones. So when the frets are starting to stick out, like I said, due to variations in humidity, temperature, whatever, they might actually chip your wood. So it's not just about feeling something like with your fingers running along the fretboard, but actually it might chip away some of the wood. Now, maple and ebony as well, they're much denser, so chipping is less likely to occur, though not impossible. But rosewood is much more fragile from this perspective, and also it kind of fluctuates more heavily with humidity and temperature. That's why you have to put lemon oil or some sort of moisturizing oil in order to kind of keep it in check, not getting too dry, and also taking care and not making it too moist. But yeah, I mean, so you can have it chip away your wood, or if you have some finish on the side, guess what? You get these weird hazy bubbles on the side, which happen due to the fact that the fret is now pushing against the finish, and it starts to separate it a little bit from the wood, creating these air bubbles, air pockets right here. They kind of look like nail paint that wants to flake off, and eventually it does flake off, and it's really nasty. You can see this the kind of thing happening on a lot of vintage guitars, for example. So finish might be flaking off as a result. You can see here some more extreme case on an acoustic guitar. So yeah, this is really nasty when it happens. But make no mistake, a lot of maple fretboards are actually lacquered or finished. Either gloss finish or matte satin, doesn't matter. So this can happen no matter what. If you have finish around, the fret tang, and this thing happens, and your frets are starting to stick out, beware. Not the end of the world, but still a little bit unpleasant, right? So, uh, okay, back to our problem. Uh, Not only is the viewer asking for something that is perfectly the opposite of what we have been discussing so far, but you might be thinking that if you do give a little bit of headroom, so to speak, when mounting the fret for the first time and kind of having like this groove in here, you might have enough headroom so that even if the wood does shrink with the loss of humidity or changes in temperature, the fret tang will not stick out. Well, this is the case a lot of times, and many people, many luthiers, and many companies over the time started looking for different ways in avoiding, fret ends sticking out. Therefore, this is one such solution, and you might be asking yourself, like, okay, so what's the procedure? Well, remember the tang that I showed you where here. So the tang obviously runs across along with the crown itself. So when you're first like nipping, like cutting the fret wire is going to be, I mean, the at the place where you've cut the crown, that's the same place where you're cutting the tang. It's one continuous strip, right? So you can see it again here with this much more smooth example, right? It's all in one piece. Therefore, if I go back here, you'll see that some people like to leave the crown intact, but remove a section of the fret tang. Thus, um, avoiding the possibility of the tank sticking out. Now, I'd like to say this in and of itself is not the perfect solution because, like, yeah, you might not get the fret tank to stick out, but still, if your wood starts to grow in, I mean shrink in, you're still gonna get the crown itself sticking out. So okay, but the reason why people resort to these sort of methods is because when you're mounting them like this and you're leaving these grooves kind of like open with some of the material removed because the tang is now way inwards, uh, which by the way looks awfully similar to what the user is showing us in the first picture. Now it gives you the opportunity to basically fill the like the gaps, the holes with some sort of dust. Luthiers traditionally have the custom of just filing down, scraping down some very fine dust out of the same wood that the fretboard is made out of. Kind of like if this is rosewood, they have some spare rosewood somewhere. They just start filing down so that they have some sawdust, and they put it in here, and then you kind of put some hardening glue or whatever just to keep it in place, and then you start filing it down to give it this very, very nice aesthetic, uniform look where you can barely see the hole that's now filled. And yeah, wait, still not time for that image. What I wanted to say is, over the time, I stopped complicating this thing for as far as I'm concerned. What I'm doing is, if there's some sort of ebony or rosewood that I'm dealing with, or some sort of dark wood, it might be Polfero, it might be laurel or whatever. If it's dark wood, usually I just grab some chocolate powder, cocoa, whatever, and I put it in, put a drop of super glue, let it harden. It's gonna have like some nasty, bolts sticking out, but like I said, after filing it down, it looks perfect. If the color variation is too big, then yes, I might be going for sanding off a little bit of leftover material from the fretboard itself or trying to match it somehow, but most of the times chocolate or cocoa will do just fine. Now, guess what? The evolution to that method is, well, rather than, you know, running our fret slot all the way till the end and then putting this modified fret wire with the tang removed partially, like a few millimeters off of each side. Why do this when we can basically stop with the fret slot, with the fret canal? We can stop again 1 or 2 millimeters prior to the end of the fretboard. We still get the desired result by putting the fret in. It's still not going to stick out. Then you're basically removing the excess fret here, and you don't have to fill anything with any sawdust or powder or whatever, just because you haven't ran your slot all the way till the end. Uh, that works. It kind of avoids one problem, but if you're not paying attention and you're not leaving again a little bit of headroom between the end of the fret tang and the end of the slot itself right here, and it's kind of like snug fits, almost kind of like touching. You might be running into troubles later down the line because you can see here there's no canal, there's no slot. The This guitar is done in this fashion. However, because of what I just said, not enough headroom, and the wood again is looking to shrink itself down. Now the fret tang is pressing against whatever millimeter it has here, left over, and because this is not very thick, it's going to start cracking, just like that. So again, different method, different pros and cons. Now, you might be thinking at this point, hey, I don't care, I have binding, or I do care because I don't have binding, but now that I know of all these problems, next time I'm getting myself a brand new guitar, I'm gonna look for something with binding because this is kind of like you know devoid of all those problems because the fret ends around here, and then the binding is basically just being cut, a file down flush with the fretboard here, and then it's kind of like rounded over to kind of give the illusion that it gives the fret wire a continuation. But yeah, make no mistake, the fret wire is not somehow being wrapped around some sort of plastic-ish gummy uh, inner pocket of the binding here. No, it's just the fret wire ends exactly where you see it. Then you have the binding, which originally is much taller, and then when you start to file it down, you kind of like follow the contour of the fretboard, then the fretboard, and then the fret, and so on. So it kind of gives this very nice illusion. So there's no risk involved in this method, right? Well, think again. So same thing can happen, differences in temperature and humidity. One thing starts to pull in or out or whatever. Eventually, you start getting such ugly cracks. So, different guitars, the same issue all over the place. Now, going back to our initial question here. Is this a problem? First of all, no. So that's why I said in the beginning, you're actually, you should be happy if you're having this because you don't have the frets sticking out. Therefore, they will not interfere with your playing. It won't cut. It won't do any sort of damage. It just kind of looks a little bit off, but you have enough headroom to basically you have enough headroom for the wood to wiggle in and out. Now, is this very aesthetic? No, it's not. So if done properly, some of our previous methods, like maybe this one, again with the proper headroom so that you don't result in something like this, or even this, again with enough headroom, whatever you're filling the slots with here, and then polishing, chances are it won't be pushing out. I have the same thing with my very cheap Jackson right now, the JS11. It's not necessarily a telltale sign of an expensive guitar versus cheap guitar. Traditional guitars usually, traditional guitar makers or models usually don't have this, so Gibson will always have binding, or for the ones without binding, you will kind of see the like the end of the fret tang, and with strats and so on. Again, you will see the end of the fret tang. More modern constructions do kind of use these techniques, which I'm very grateful for. However, again, everything has a con if it's not being done properly. Okay, but if done properly, they will definitely avoid some of the inconveniences of the traditional methods. Now, here again, I was kind of wondering, was it a case of smaller frets not reaching, not extending all the way till the edge of the fretboard, or did they actually reach the end of the fretboard initially? They were perfectly flush, and later on, when they got left behind by the ever expanding wood, due to absorption of water from the air, now they were kind of left like this. So I said, hey, could you please send me a picture of the fretboard kind of like facing up and also a little bit on the side, kind of like on at an angle. And yes, we have such a picture. So why did I want this picture? By the way, the guitar is PRS, and like I said, it's brand new. That's why the viewer was contemplating returning it. So now that I'm looking at it from the top, I can see that the crown itself kind of extends all the way to the edge of the fretboard. So it's not necessarily a case of small or smaller cut frets. The frets are okay. It's just that the tang somehow is maybe half a millimeter shorter on each end. So maybe due to cutting the fret wire at an angle, not perfectly 90 degrees, or maybe they wanted to snip it just a little bit to avoid the tang from sticking out, but then they kind of forgot to fill it in with sawdust or whatever. Anyhow, I just wanted to give the viewer and the rest of you some clue as to what's behind the different methods of installing frets, and why do you get different behaviors when it comes to uh, getting the frets to stick out or be slightly buried in, and all that thing. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. Let me know if this was helpful, if you got some information out of it. But yeah, till next time, I hope you are now a little bit more informed and you kind of gained a little bit more appreciation for what goes into the different schools, I should say, the different schools and methodologies of installing frets and trying to avoid various problems without causing new ones, right? So, yeah, until next time, see y'all later. Oh, and let me know if this slideshow video format is okay for you guys without just watching me talk into the camera and having images overlaid on top, which I think is much more distracting. And I think this is much more neat. So yeah, let me know what you do think about this format whenever it's suited, obviously. Okay, so see y'all later and goodbye.